Welcome to another episode of the Miami Tech Pod. Really excited for today's guest. As far as the co-hosts go, we have Maria and Brian. This week's guest in particular, we have Saif Ishoof, VP of Engagement at FIU and Head of Venture Miami. Want to talk about, you do so much for the city of Miami. You're all over the place in the best of ways, adding tons of value for the city and being a great spokesperson for it. So thank you for that, Saif. And yeah, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Brian. I love this pod. I love hanging with you all. I'm excited to dig in. There's a lot to cover, both substance and then hopefully we'll mix in appropriate levels of the absurd because it's why not?
Exactly. In true Miami fashion, you know?
Yeah.
Well, great, man. Well, we got a bunch of cool stuff to talk about. But first, for our listeners that might not know you so well or just want to know more, tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up at FIU, and then also how you ended up at working with the mayor at Venture Miami.
So I'm a Miami kid, which means like a lot of people, I'm actually an immigrant to America. I like to say that I was born in the Caribbean, made in the 305. My family's from Guyana. I grew up right here in Kendall. I'm still in Kendall-landia, so I'm proud of that. I know a lot of people, when we think about what's going on in Miami, we don't rep for neighborhoods that are out there, Miami Gardens, Homestead. So I'm still in La Patria of Kendall, loving it. It can't be beat. There's a Pinecrest Bakery on every corner. And so grew up here, had the joy of going away for undergrad in DC, thought I wanted to be a diplomat, came back. A lot of people don't know I'm actually a lawyer by training, went to University of Miami. I like to say I now just play a lawyer on Instagram as opposed to actually practicing. I still pay my bar dues. But when I graduated from law school, which is over 20 years ago, I was always fascinated by technology. And along with a childhood friend, actually built a vendor management software company that was focused on the agricultural vertical. So I lived the crazy founder life from about 1999 to the early 2001. My company was located right in South Miami. I did all of this stuff when you're the non-technical founder, payroll, budget, marketing, sales, BD, making sure that the servers were working when we were playing Halo late night, etc. So I learned a lot about that, and then had an opportunity to exit with the company, and then did a bunch of different things. My dad was an immigrant entrepreneur, worked with him, also built a business that helped large Indian industrial engineering companies launch in the United States. But I think what's also seminal in my journey is, when 9/11 happened, I was one of only a handful of Muslim lawyers in the state of Florida. And so arising from that, that's what really pushed me into the outer world of points of connections with other faith communities, elected officials, law enforcement, local media. And so I know my moniker today is Connector in Chief in Miami, which I embrace. But actually, that was born out of a really difficult time, which is in the post 9/11 environment, being Muslim American, and one of the few people who kind of understood how to navigate that. I then went on in my journey, had an opportunity later on to be named the founding executive director of City Year, which works with young people as tutors, mentors, and role models in schools all around Miami, from Homestead all the way up to North Miami. So I had the joy of working with close to 2,000 young people. And then back in 2015, I was recruited by Dr. Rosenberg to serve as the Vice President of Engagement at FIU, where I lead public and private partnerships. And then I know we'll get to the role that I've been playing over the last year. So I like to consider that my journey over the last 20 years has come in multiple chapters, but at the heart of it has been helping people unlock human potential, operating at the nexus of innovation and opportunity. And then more than anything, trying to be a resource for young people that are trying to find their way in their life journey. And so I love it. For me, that's my joy. That's what fills my cup. And along the way with the innovation ecosystem, and Brian and I have talked about this, I played multiple different roles as an investor, advisor, board member. So I've tracked the journey of what's happened in Miami's tech ecosystem, if you will, from about 1999.
Saif, I think you and I met when you were at City Year, right?
That's right. Yeah,
maybe 10 years ago.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I love your passion for this city, this community, and I'm curious, what was how did you get hooked into this Venture Miami stuff? How did you get connected to the mayor and this initiative and all that stuff?
So I think the origin point of it, I've known the mayor a long time. I'm a little bit older than him, so I've seen him and his work in our community from before he was a city commissioner, well, before he was mayor, before he was city commissioner, to when he was a private citizen, and so and just his evolution as a leader. And I would say back in December, as the moment of launch, if you will, happened for this current wave of the Miami tech movement, he and I had a conversation, and it was, as we know, that December of 2020, which is in pandemic time, like 5 years ago, but in reality 11 months ago. As the tweet movement was going on, it was over the holidays, and so I was in there on all the tweets, replying, engaging, trying to let companies that were coming in, founders come in, as a function of my FIU role, to say, hey, there's great talent here. The public infrastructure is great. There's great organizations like Refresh, Emerge, etc. And as the mayor describes it, he says that he was riding a wave, and he said he looked over his right shoulder and he saw one guy also on a smaller surfboard on that wave, and that happened to be me. And so it then led to a conversation where he said, hey, I know you've got a strength in assembling teams. Could you pull together a small Avengers-like team of folks that are both on loan from other units within the city, some of whom will be underwritten by local philanthropy, to stand up an operational back end so we could substantively engage? So while the mayor is engaged in the vision and the storytelling, we actually have a professionalized modality of being able to connect with these companies, making sure if they need to get to different entities or different companies or whoever in the region, that we can really engage at that substance layer. And so that's really how I got plugged in. And so Dr. Rosenberg at FIU was kind enough to say, let's figure out a public-public partnership. So that's what was able to put me on loan for a portion of my time to be able to serve in this role as the head of Venture Miami, alongside great friends and colleagues like Mike Sarasti, Melissa Krinsman, Keith Carswell, Kevin Ruiz, and now Kelly Montoya, who's from the University of Miami. So we've got this portfolio team and a broader supporting cast of players from within the mayor's office. But quite frankly, everybody in Miami, we're all part of Venture Miami. It's not like there's some of us that happen to work there and that are in the mix, but this moment is really, it's a nosotros moment.
On that topic, you kind of touched a bit on the talent piece. That obviously is top of mind with all these new companies forming here and the companies here growing. What are you seeing on the talent front, and what are you telling folks that are moving here about the talent, the pool that we have here, and how we're trying to grow it?
So I'll say two things, because I'm biased in regards that obviously my love and joy is focused on helping job seekers, talent, find those opportunities. So the first thing that I say before I dig into that is that in a world where we're seeing an ocean of liquidity, we're in a desert of talent. So if you want to insert the casino metaphor, it used to be that the businesses were the casino or the house, and the job seekers were the poker players. Those roles have inverted. And so what's beautiful about this moment is that really, if you're a job seeker, you're holding all the cards. So I start with this idea of like, know your worth. And that's not about being mercenary, but that's really about optimizing against this moment. I love that. I love being able to hear stories of a student from Miami-Dade College saying, they offered me this, but I was able to go back and say, well, you know what? I actually know Ruby on Rails. I actually know a little bit of Unity, and get a better paid job, because that's what has been compounding in our market for so long. For the businesses that are inbound, I would say we are in, and President Rosenberg at FIU says this again and again, Miami is a cluster of talent, right? So one cheesy way of saying it is like, look, we're a college town. It's just like we don't look like one because we don't have a lot of crappy Irish bars. So when we think about it, for the businesses that are coming here, they know that it's unbelievably difficult if you're in the Bay Area or New York to recruit a machine learning engineer if that same ML engineer got 5 offers from Google, Netflix, Facebook, etc. Right? How are they going to make an informed decision to go to a seed company or Series A backed company? Here in Miami, you're going to have a greater risk appetite of world-class talent that wants in on that. And I think that's part of the arbitrage that businesses that are coming here are making, that they see that, and they also see that there's a grit, there's a sense of persistence. that our talent has. This is not just about the diversity of our talent, which is indeed diverse, but it's also about the excellence of our talent. We don't want to just win on the basis of helping businesses that are looking to fill sort of whatever it is DEI quotas, which are important in advancing the best version of America 2021. But we want them to optimize and see the talent we've got. These are globally, they're ready to kick butt globally. And I think that that's what's happening right now. And that's part of the magnetic pull of businesses that are coming here.
Yeah, totally agree. And I want to shift a little bit as far as, you run VP of engagement at FIU, right? So I think you got a great finger on the pulse is like how we're trying to bridge the gap here with like education and computer science, programs and stuff like that. That's always been referred to as an Achilles heel for Miami. Again, like when I was running Live Ninja, I never felt the void as much as I think people make it out to be. I thought that there was great talent down here, and I think boot camps like WinCode and Ironhack and the like have really churned out some great engineering talent into South Florida, and now you see great engineering talent relocating to South Florida. So just curious to get your take. I know you got a great pulse on the situation. What are we doing as a city to kind of close the gap? Because a lot of the naysayers are going to point to our computer science programs and feel like we're not kind of being at the same echelon as some of these other universities out there.
So I think one thing that's important to factor in is the youth of our institutions. So it's never going to be fair as a starting point when people will highlight an elite university in the Northeast that, well, let's start with the fact of like, what are the sizes of their endowments? There's a certain wall of privilege that's been compounded by, in some instances, 300-400 years of wealth, right? So if you had $1 in the year 1620 and you're now sitting in the year 2021, like it's worth a lot of money. So let's acknowledge that, right? And philanthropy disproportionately flows in certain directions. Then you get to the dimension that a lot of recruiting managers themselves, there's an inherent bias that they're only recruiting from 20-25 institutions. So if you're pipelining out of Miami-Dade College or FIU or the University of Miami, you've not been traditionally in that. I think against that backdrop, what happened is we saw our youth as a competitive advantage. Our faculty members started to think very differently across the ecosystem. So leaned into the idea of how can we get industry advisory groups to inform creating curriculum advisory groups. So like our A/B testing lab at FIU is underwritten by Ultimate Software, for example. I know it's a little bit of a company that's maybe not necessarily part of this current exciting wave, but there's still an important company that's hired hundreds of local engineers, and many software devs have started in companies like that. But also some of the other companies that might not be tech per se, but they're tech powered, like Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines or Florida Power and Light. They've been making these systemic investments. And so our ability to close the gap, really comes down to how it is that we're creating more experiential learning opportunities to close that delta between campus and career. And I think students are driving that. Everyone here knows that UPE at FIU, which is the largest student technology group, they run the largest hackathon in the state of Florida. It just happened last weekend with Shell Hacks. They had over 2,800 people that registered to be part of that. So it's both intentionality with our faculty taking responsibility. It's institutional in alignment with philanthropy. We got a major new gift at FIU for the Knight School of Computer Sciences, which is going to only amplify our ability to drive that touch point. But the same thing is happening. Miami-Dade College inked some pretty big deals with IBM, Amazon Web Services. We know the University of Miami is doing really consequential things in health tech and biotech. So our ecosystem is moving. So for the critics that lament it, I oftentimes say is like, take off your Stanford jersey and check out what's happening in the 305, because, you're not going to be able to build the future. Vitalik Buterin did not create Ethereum on the back of an Ivy League pedigree, right? If we assume that the best learners in the second half of the 21st century are autodidactic, which is a big nerdy word to say they can teach themselves how to learn, then institutions of higher learning reach that goal by creating more experiential pathways for people to get their hands on code, to be able to build and create transformational things. It's not going to be about legacy pedigree institutions. It's going to be about institutions that build really real world APIs that interact with industry at light speed.
I think that's a fantastic answer. And I completely agree with everything you just said. I think it's kind of, it's overrated in my opinion. Just all the stuff that people tout, the Stanfords, the MITs, and the Harvards. Obviously, those are incredible institutions, and they will be, and they'll be historic. But learning has been democratized. It's not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. People are self-taught, and people are learning on their own. And like what you mentioned with Vitalik's example, it's exactly right.
I mean, I think the thing that's happened, right, which is like everyone needs to embrace, right? We know that we're entering into this world of the digitalization and the dematerialization of everything. And the pandemic also taught us that really among the many stories was we were always taught that there were only 2 or 3 nodes of innovation on the planet. Silicon Valley, Boston Life Sciences Corridor, Research Triangle in North Carolina, London, Berlin, right? The pandemic said that's actually not true.
Right.
There's a phenomenon that we've seen, just like cryptocurrency, the decentralization of innovation. There are people doing awesome things all over the world. It's like the story of those 2 young men in India that were like Ethereum gods, that it turned out they were the ones who bought a $70 million piece, an NFT, and they're living in an apartment block somewhere in a low-income neighborhood in India. In the metaverse, they're billionaires, but in reality, it doesn't look like that. And so that's a function of the digitization of everything, the decentralization of everything. And I think that, those of us who are in roles to support the generations that are coming, or those that want to embrace that, are recognizing that we have to plus up everything that goes with how frontier technologies can make sure that more people, not less people, are at the table playing the game, and not creating velvet ropes, but actually disintegrating them, utilizing technology and also human dignity.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. And shout out to Metakovan and Tubador, the 2 Indian guys you mentioned that bought Beeple's art for 69
That's
million.
right. If they want to airdrop me, I mean, I'll put my son's wallet, at any time.
Right. They did that news piece, I remember, and they just live in an apartment, regular apartment in India.
Yeah.
That's
great.
Pretty incredible. Before we shift, I agree with everything you just said, but I want to give a shout out to FIU in particular, because when I was running Live Ninja, every single hire we made that had an FIU background, there was just something special, honestly, about those people. And I'm not saying it's a blanket statement that everybody that comes out of FIU is incredible. But I just think there's a certain pedigree of people and a work ethic that comes out of FIU that I've come to really respect and admire. And Mark Crofton, who was coaching us on B2B sales, Mark very well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And remember, he helped us build our sales force, and he was incredibly partial. Whenever we would make a hire, if someone had FIU on their resume, it was almost like a leg up for them, because they just knew that just FIU breeds a certain kind of person, a certain kind of talent and work ethic. So while I do see that trend, the democratization of education and the decentralization of education, at the same time, I want to give a shout out for people to pay more attention to FIU and the talent coming out of FIU. That's a university on the rise, and there's some incredible talent coming out of there.
I mean, we're so proud. Thank you, Will. Thank you. I thought Breslin would have said that, because his dad is like an OG FIU faculty member and leader par excellence, and actually was even the VP of research at one point. I think Dr. Breslin has played almost every role. But yeah, I mean, what's happening at FIU is extraordinary. U.S. News and World Report just put us out. We jumped 17 spots just this year. The Florida State University system, we're now ranked #1. There's another school somewhere up in the state. They think they own that. But that's happening because of our faculty. That's happening because of our students. And quite frankly, because this visionary approach that our president, Dr. Rosenberg, has had: student success, student success, student success. It's about making sure that we can deliver the highest quality transformational education at the most economical price, to make sure that we're putting out people like the ones that we all know, folks like Gregory Johnson. Everybody knows and loves Gregory, right? Gregory's a proud Panther. He's an extraordinary software dev, somebody who's built cool stuff in the civic tech domain, helped to lead Code for South Florida. Folks like another recent alum that I work very close with, named Sana Amin, who's an immigrant and is now a software engineer at Chevron in Houston. So we're putting out that talent, but it's because we're embracing the idea of We're leaning into the community's leaning into us, and we basically built an API that's about connecting us to the world around us. We want to be that institution that's a universal Lego piece that understands that if you want to create 21st century opportunities, you have to do that with industry. It's not siloed.
I definitely appreciate the shout out. My family, both my parents have been
That's
working
right.
at
Yeah,
FIU.
your mom as well.
Yeah, I think they're closing in on almost 45 years or something like that.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
No, so FIU has a special place in my heart. I mean, not aside from the fact that I taught 1 year there as an adjunct, but I think there's something we'll sort of scratch the surface on it, and I think it's important for everyone to know that like FIU has a very high percentage of students who are actually like working while they're students, and that instills this level of work ethic and of scrappiness and of hunger for better, right? Versus
Time
other
management, yeah.
yeah, time management for sure. Versus other schools where the people are sort of there to study and have fun, or study and have the traditional college experience. That doesn't necessarily translate always to people being any more qualified for a position than at a commuter school or a state school or whatever the case may be. And I think one of the things that it's on FIU really is to tell these stories more with their partners. The fact that like Ultimate Software is not going around saying that they've hired hundreds of FIU engineers because that's their secret, right? That's their like secret advantage. They know that this is where we're getting a solid pipeline. We're able to turn this into a $10 billion company with the help of hundreds, if not thousands, of FIU grads and other local college grads, right? Like if all of a sudden Ultimate Software was going on the CNBC Squawk Box talking about how they've been secretly recruiting out of South Florida for this whole time, all of a sudden there'd be a run on their potential. There'd be a competition there, But
that's right.
I think the whole talent issue is something that Saif, you and I have talked about this for years, and you've been key in sort of building up that pipeline and with the TDN stuff and the work at FIU and all that, and across the county. I think one of the things we have to sort of educate the companies that are new to Florida, is that ignoring the local schools is sort of a lazy. It's being lazy, right? And a lot of times people look at just the pedigree and they say that's their lazy filter, because they're like, if they're good enough to get into Harvard, then they should be good enough to, work at my company. Like that completely ignores the fact that maybe they got into Harvard because they were family donated a wing to the library or their parents went there or whatever, right? And so they got in for whatever reason. But I mean, this is part of the educating people on Florida and helping them do better business in Florida, because once you become a local, once you understand the nuances of how everything works, things become much easier for you to build and grow and do things innovatively and interestingly here in South Florida.
100%. And I think that this paradigm of this notion that the moment that we're having in Miami is only about tech bros from Silicon Valley. That's actually completely inaccurate. This moment that we're having right now is about young people. It's about folks that are transitioning from jobs where they were at, being able to go through upskilling programs. It's about optimizing the opportunity table. Yes, there are people that are en route here from Silicon Valley that have worked in hypergrowth companies, and they're part of the story, and we need them to be successful, and their ability to attract angel and venture capital dollars is renowned. But at the same time, it's about the fact that like our institutions are creating talent at scale. Even the alumni of our institutions that might have made careers in other cities are returning home to South Florida. And the proof is in the pudding. We know that in Q2 2021, we now lead the country in year-over-year tech job growth, right? That's consequential. That is the blood work. You can fight with your doctor. You can't argue with the blood work. So this notion that this is only about a certain privileged group, as opposed to the idea that what's happening, even as a function of the pandemic, something I'm very proud of. My team at FIU, we actually created an upskilling program which is not as sizzly as people would think. It's an upskilling program called Up Labs, which stands for Urban Potential Laboratories. We created it 3 years ago to be able to rapidly upskill adult learners in 14 weeks for job opportunities in the healthcare domain. We've gone through now, we're into our 6th cohort. I can't do math, I'm a lawyer. 6th cohort, all right, of learners. 25 to 35 people in it every day. These are everyday folks, Uber drivers, abuelas, people who are stuck really in the grind of wage labor. We're able to push them through the paces of 14 weeks of upskilling, and we've got about an 85% placement rate. I have a friend, a dear friend, who worked at FIU in food services. She lost her job as a function of the pandemic. She was able to go through this upskilling program, Up Labs, and now she has a great job at the Florida Department of Health, right? What's happening in this economy right now? Yes, there are the sizzly stories of sort of cool tech bro, worked at a hyper growth company, worth a lot of money, comes here and is able to raise angel capital and venture and scale and build another kick butt company. It's just as much about folks like the individual that I mentioned being able to rapidly upskill, reaffirm dignity, and make sure that she's at the table. And I think that if we keep our eye on the prize of, like, when Mayor Suarez talks about the capital of capital, yes, we've seen $300 billion of capital inbound to Miami over the last 9 months, but it's also about human capital. It's about social capital. It's about cultural capital. What's happening with NFTs, I know I got Will's attention, is not because we're leading only on technology. It's because Miami is a hub for creative genius at multiple levels. So this capital of capital notion is not just about monstrous sized private equity funds that are moving here, but it's also about the creative artist that's saying, you know, I've been trying my thing, it's not working out. Maybe technology can become a modality through which I can take my art, bring it to the world, be able to provide for my family, and live a better life, and be able to continue to live my bliss as a creative person.
I love that, and I love like how you rephrase capital of capital, because I think that's kind of what everybody's thinking is Miami just focused on venture capital dollars, and it's way beyond just VC dollars. Like you said, human capital, social capital, cultural capital. There's all these things that Miami excels at, and we need to shine a light on it. And I think, you know, part of the early feedback that we got from some of the folks that have been in the scene kind of doing the groundwork, like Maria and Brian over the years, was that, you know, we need to kind of focus a lot. The newcomers, we, you know, welcome all the newcomers into the city, but also make sure we shine a light on the people that have been here, like you, Saif, and Maria and Brian, that have really been putting the work for a decade plus, so that this moment can actually happen, right? So
I'll never forget years ago when, like, Brian and Will and Matt and others, like when we brought Brad Fell down, right? And he did a workshop, and he reminded us at that time that transformational ecosystems are places that don't distinguish between new and old, which is one of the reasons why I know we use it. We say OG, but there's no OGs and new Gs. We're all just Gs jamming together. You know, we're just trying, you know, and that idea of, like, if, you know, I've been here a long time, but if somebody just got here last night and they're a good person and they don't steal my parking spot at Publix, I'll jam with them. That's all good. That's what, like, I think that that's the ethos we need to be. Miami's a place that was built by people who survived the horrors of Jim Crow, Castro's Cuba, the horrors and the nightmare of the Holocaust, and so many other experiences to build a city that's in formation. You know, the poet Richard Blanco says Miami's always becoming, right? We have ghosts that haunt us. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas reminded us about we have to take care of our environment. The multiple things are happening at once, but if we embrace that spirit of becoming, we can jam as G's all together to do some really, really cool stuff.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we're all G's, and yeah, definitely don't steal the parking spot at Publix, especially now, because chicken tender subs are on sale.
Chicken tender subs are on sale. I was in the process of stealing a parking spot the other day, and my wife was waiting for me. She's like, "What's going on?" I said, "No, I think I stole this person's parking space." So I said the Indian and me had to realign good karma. So I pulled in and I pulled out. I deferred. I don't need that energy. I don't need that energy.
I love that. I love that. All right, to shift gears again, you've been in the epicenter of a lot of the movement that's happening, kind of right next to the mayor, doing some cool stuff. From your perspective, I think we'd be curious to hear, like, what are like top 3 moments that have really stuck out to you, like in the past, you know, year, that have been like, wow, this is pretty epic. Something really big is happening. Like, just give us some.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. So I think one of the things was during the impromptu Miami Tech Week, the
Mhm.
team led by the vision of the mayor, we said like everyone's coming together and if you're coming to the 305, you got to have a cafecito. Like
Remember
you
that.
have to,
Yeah.
everyone's got to have, you got to have one of these. You got to get in on it. And again, to the spirit of democratization, we said, well, what if we do a cafecito at City Hall and the mayor invites everybody, right? There's no red velvet rope. There's no invite list. Just put it out on Twitter. Cafecito at City Hall. We'll bring the world's largest La Cafetera. And we put it out. That was it. And anybody could come. Democratize access, right? And we had like 1,000 people RSVP, probably 500 or 600 people show up. It was not some overly planned, stylized, formalistic event. I mean, obviously, we need to be mindful because of COVID and pandemic protocols and public safety, and everybody was in a good place, so we were safe and healthy together. And then we made it happen. And I was literally ordering pastelitos on Uber Eats, like as I'm driving to City Hall. It was the most gritty startup feel type thing that happened. And it was proof positive that the energy is real. I think most of you all were there, right? People were like, is the mayor really doing a cafecito? But again, that goes to the idea of that Venture Miami is a nosotros thing. All of us are part of that. We made that happen. The mayor was able to shine a light, flip a switch on, get folks there. So that was definitely one really cool thing. The other great thing is, back when the Bitcoin conference was happening, the tickets to that conference were expensive. It's not a knock on our local organizers or even the BTC folks. It just is what it is, right? And so the mayor said, let's do our own pre-crypto conference, but we'll do it virtual and anybody can participate. And then he's going to get some huge name people in on there, like Chamath and Balaji and Pomp. And we did that. And it just had thousands and thousands of people log in that were part of it, right? So that that's the second thing. And then the other thing is really on the human capital side, the fact that like amidst the backdrop of all of this, Knight Foundation, thank you, Raul, thank you, Alberto Barguin, thank you, Juan Martinez, and others. They decided like, yo, it's time to make a drop the mic investment with the Knight School of Computer Science. So being there, seeing that happen, but then also upskilling opportunities are happening with like SoftBank's Data Science for All, other initiatives that are happening in the community, the SoftBank Operator School, some of the awesome stuff that Miami-Dade College is doing with Tesla and AWS. So all of those things, but the world's largest cafetera and the impromptu cafecito party that we had, that was a biggie that I think will stand out. And I think was a seminal moment in really bringing to a head the idea like this is a movement. We're all part of it. There's not necessarily, this is to the spirit of decentralization. We're doing this together in conjunto.
I love that. I was actually at that cafecito party. It reminded me, you know what it reminded me of a keg party. But instead of a keg of beer, we had, some coffee and some cafecitos and good vibes. And I remember the mayor's speech, and you in particular gave a great intro, and it was a great event.
So while Caesar couldn't make it, he did phone in some questions and
phoning it in. He's phoning it in.
Ever the lobbyist, he was wondering, once Suarez passes the torch, will he be passing it to you? And are you ever thinking of running for mayor of Miami?
Never. First of all, I live in unincorporated Dade. I respect those who go down the journey of elected politics. I take a more monastic approach to the work that I do, which is a lot more focused on being a people builder, which is sometimes if you're in an elected role, you don't have the time to do that. I'm part of an extraordinary team with Venture Miami. I mean, these are folks that are legit for days. Melissa Krinsman, our venture capitalist in residence, you want her on the cap table. Now she's on everybody's cap table in the sense of being able to share her wisdom. Mike Sarasti, I mean, can we say enough about somebody who is a literal, actual rock star in addition to being our CIO? Kevin Ruiz, who leads business development for us. I mean, if you don't know Kevin Math is, this guy has like a data source plugged into his head about every single company that's moving to Miami, every data point. Keith Carswell, who's an economic development genius, knows about how it is that as we build this, that we're able to also ensure that the opportunity equation, all of the how can I help shirts, where the swag, we had a merch strategy, right? You know what happened with the proceeds? It went to underwrite the iTech Academy in Little Haiti. So everybody that you see that's walking around rocking one of these shirts, we channeled our merch dollars to support young people in a community to be able to equip them with 21st century skills. And then, of course, Kelly Montoya, who just joined us from the University of Miami, that's part of our team, Otto Boudet, Jeremy Schwartz, Nick Pascal, who serves as the mayor chief of staff. So it's a joy being part of the team. But no, I am not on that journey. I am much more focused on trying to help support others in their journey and building them up and giving a little bit of hype and dapping them up. That's because that's what I do. I love that.
So what would you say is next for the Venture Miami team?
I think that the next stage of it is being able to leverage some of the resources that have been possible via American Rescue Plan dollars to actually formalize something that looks like an innovation entity within the city of Miami. Because all of us that are part of Venture Miami right now, the initiative Venture Miami, are either on loan from other institutions or other parts of the city or the Downtown Development Authority. So I think in very short order, the city commission plus the mayor have allocated some hard dollars to be able to stand up an actual innovation entity within the city that will be able to continue this important work and really focus around the operative pillars of concierge support for funders and founders, a hyper concentration around talent, making sure diversity, equity, and inclusion is a competitive advantage. I like to say DEI is not the kids' table at Thanksgiving in the 305. It's our competitive advantage. And then the fourth thing is making sure that we're a node of opportunity in the innovation ecosystem. But it's not just us. It's the county, it's the Beacon Council, it's the Chamber, it's Refresh Miami, it's Miami-Dade College, it's FIU, it's Florida Memorial. And then the fifth one is really this idea that there's only one innovation ecosystem. There's not the innovation ecosystem for the people who are at La Carreta on Bird Road and the people who are at Soho House. We're all together building this in concert. And so I think that what's next for Venture Miami is being able to have a formalized entity, some dollars to be able to support driving that mission forward. And so I'm very excited about seeing that and the folks that are going to be part of that next chapter, because our ability to do this, it's not about any one person holding the microphone too long. It's about passing it on and making sure that the spirit of what we're building is something that we're doing it in a way that is inclusive of everyone. It's the reason why the mayor said to me, find dollars that we can get more people engaged. So one of the first grants we wrote was with JP Morgan Chase to create an opportunity program that specifically focuses on getting more female founders of color access to angel capital. And right now we're about to announce a hire of somebody who will lead that. It's a joint grant between FIU and the city. But again, that's the spirit of what's going on. So I'm pumped about the next chapter of Venture Miami, and I'm ready to turn on my Twitter microphone and support and amplify it and plus it up and play my part, as I know everyone who's on this podcast is and everybody who'll be listening.
I love that. And I love that you repped Kendall. We have two Kendall products of Kendall on the pod, Brian and I, and Will grew up in Miami Beach. So, and then I'm a hammocks girl, if you really know Kendall.
Oh yeah, hammocks.
And so
my halal butcher shop that I go to is in hammocks. I don't want to get commercial and shout them out. Not that anybody is trying to go to 786 Grocery, but Uncle, what's up, man? We love you.
No, and I loved your joke about Pinecrest Bakery. Did you see the Plantain had
they killed it. They killed it. That we're all like, I challenge Will to build like a Pinecrest Bakery metaverse, and we just live there. We just like all day, every day, just are looking for croquetas and whatnot. But yeah, they crushed it when the Plantain did that. I loved it. I think it goes to the tongue and cheekiness we need.
And in the spirit of repping properly Miami, the most Miami question is, what high school did you go to?
I'm a Gulliver kid, so that's where I'm at. And so I'm there. Actually, today's their homecoming football game. I'm going to be at that wearing some of the swag. It's not exactly the type of school that people are like, yo, bro, Gulliver. It's like, you go there. It's a great education. I'm very privileged because of my parents' investment for me to be able to go there as an immigrant kid. Certainly not where my family started when we got here, but as a function of my parents' sacrifice, it's something that was made possible for me. So I'm not going to say I'm not showing love to the Raiders, but that's where I went to school.
Nice. And for the record, Maria, you went to high school where?
Coral Reef. Go Barracudas.
All right, and Brian
Barracuda.
I went to Coral Gables.
gave us high, and I rep Beach High. High Tides, baby. Class of
Can't go wrong. Hey, this is serious. The only other thing, where'd Caesar go?
He went to Braddock.
Okay, this is serious. I mean, this is like a serious proper lineup, right? The only other school maybe missing is like Southwest. We need to
Sunset,
we gotta get
Southwest was my home school, but
okay. So Breslin's got some Eagles roots as well. So
but I went to Gables Magnet program. So
my eldest sister went to Killian, so I got some of that in our family too. So we rep
a lot of my buddies went to Crop as well up in Aventura.
Props.
Yeah, for the people who didn't grow up here, it's like a very Miami question to ask, like what high school you went to.
It's also
it's
like the most important thing, or like what mall or where did you hang out at? So where did you hang out at, Brian?
I mean, I used to. No, I spent a lot of time at the Falls, and Town and Country too, growing up because my parents lived in between in that area roughly. So
Town and Country was awesome. And the Falls, I'm a Falls, it's like, where did you watch your first movie with your friends by yourself without your parents? Will?
Ooh, I mean, listen, so for me, Byron Carlisle Theater on 71st Street, before it was right next to Prima Pasta, for those that know.
I remember it.
That was the theater, Byron Carlisle, baby. And then Bell Harbor Theater as well, if you couldn't make the show. There was an old theater in Bell Harbor with like the red seats, like with the sequins in them that were like so old school Miami theater. So those were the two. And then Aventura opened a few years later.
That's fancy. That's fancier.
Before Aventura, no, there was Loman's Plaza in North Miami. So that was a big one. But
Brian,
the mall I grew up in, I'm a beach boy. So Lincoln Road, when it was like, not Lincoln Road today. So my weekends were at Fritz's skate shop on Lincoln Road, getting my rollerblades tuned up so that I could, be rollerblading down Lincoln Road as a 12-year-old degenerate in Miami.
What about you, Maria? What were your spots?
Well, I have to say I grew up closer to Town and Country, but when I went to middle school, it was kind of near the Falls, so all my friends would hang out at the Falls. So, but I was gonna say, do you remember the Dollar Movie Theater in like Miller or something? There used to be a movie theater.
Miller 137th.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember going there, and that was like a $1 old movies or something. I don't know why it was only $1, but.
So I have a super obscure, nerdy, old school Miami thing. So there used to be a one theater in the Grove where the post office is now. And in the 80s, my dad would take me to computer meetups there. So this is like late 80s, and we'd go and we would buy a game like on like those old school floppy disks, and that was like our thing that we'd go do, and I think that theater was torn down and turned into the post office, but this is like super old school nerd Miami culture.
I remember that. And I also want to rep for what I think was one of the best floppy disk games ever, the King's Quest series. I don't want anybody judging me, but King's Quest was it. Space Quest was almost as good, but King's Quest Volume 2 is probably one of the best OG games.
Oregon Trail. You can't go wrong.
Were you a King's Quest guy, Brian, Maria?
I played King's Quest, I think 3 or 4. Okay. I think there was like up to 6 of them. I don't know.
It kept going.
Yeah.
And then I grew up on a lot of Carmen Sandiego. That was the
that was my jam.
Carmen Sandiego. I was also like a lemonade stand tycoon. I was like it. I mean, lemonade stand. I think I had I was like the Jeff Bezos of lemonade stand at one time.
I love that. Hey, not many people know Jeff Bezos has got some Miami roots, right? We don't talk
Palmetto,
about
baby. Palmetto. We got Bezos at Palmetto. We got Sheryl Sandberg at NMB, and we have Eduardo Saverin, the co-founder of Facebook, of Gulliver. So I mean, look, put that on the cap table. That's like $2 trillion right there.
That's right.
I mean, look, the creator of Firefox went to ransom too, Blake Ross.
Didn't know that.
We don't count ransom, and for anybody who's watching that, that's like not a real.
Melissa Krinsman would have issue with that, I'm sure.
Melissa would. So when she watches that, for anybody ransom, no, I don't know where that is. Is that a country club near
Ransom? We got Ransom and Country Day. We got love.
We showed love. Who are we showing love for?
It's a different elk. It's a different elk.
Come on, man. I'll take you back to a cross country meet in '92 and tell you not nice stories about them. It's different, man. It's
They
different.
have there is some stories I know
There's
that
some beef. There's some beef there.
I know.
It's not like Belen Columbus. It's like it's not as layered and textured. It's actually kind of very sad, but we'll take it.
I love it. Bro, we have to have you back on the show because I feel like we got stories for days that we can.
Much more interesting. We were talking, human potential and opportunity, and all of a sudden we land back into like a little bit of Miami racheteria.
You gotta get into it. All right, cool.
Thank you.
As we wrap, Saif, please, some calls to action for the audience. How can folks get in touch with you? Folks that want to get involved with some of the stuff Venture Miami's doing. What's the best way on both fronts, Venture Miami, and then how to get in touch with you personally?
I think the best way is on the Venture Miami and personally, professionally, whatnot. On Twitter, I'm Saif305. My DMs are actually open. So people say that and then they don't respond, but it's real. I'm also a big LinkedIn user. So I think that you have an opportunity to have a more thoughtful conversation there, as opposed to people just wanting to get a cafecito or lunch. I think on LinkedIn, you can then have a more proper exchange. But truthfully, our entire team, Kevin Ruiz, Melissa Krinsman, Mike Sarasti, Keith Carswell, all of us are available there. Of course, the mayor himself keeps his DMs are open to be able to make sure. And I think that we've done a pretty good job over the last year, if you will, of the Venture Miami initiative to be as responsible and responsive. We have a Salesforce backend to make sure that it's not just the Miami hype up, but it's the substance layer follow up to make sure that we're able to track inbound inquiries to where they can be most helpful. I mean, sometimes it comes to us, but really it's a career source thing, or really it's a Beacon Council thing. And I think that that's important. It's like we view it in our work at Venture Miami is like we want to lead the league in assists, to use the basketball analogy. We don't need to necessarily put the ball in the basket every time, but if we can get it to where the ball can get in the basket, but that's how people can get us. And I think all of us on the team try to make ourselves engaged in events. Last night I was at Startup Showdown at Le Rouge at Monotech. I know Mike gets out there and mixes up at a lot of stuff, as does Melissa. Melissa also has Startup Mornings, which is a great event series that she started, which is an actual startup morning event where she's able to give insight and feedback to startups, and she hosts them for a little breakfast and coffee at City Hall. And if you check her Twitter and my Twitter and our team's Twitter, you can get in and get engaged and plugged in. But more to come about some of the more formalized programming now that Venture Miami is going through this transition from an initiative to an actual entity that will be able to have full-time staffing to support people.
Love that. All right, awesome. Well, we'll make sure to drop all of Saif's information and Venture Miami's information in the description so folks that are listening and watching can get in touch. And what Saif's saying, he really means they are super accessible. Feel free to reach out if there's ways you want to get involved. Please do so. This was a lot of fun, man. We could have went on for another hour on this. So
definitely, I appreciate you all so much. And thanks for what you're doing, which is you're telling the story, but you're doing it in a Miami way, which is that you're including everyone to be part of the conversation. I think it's important everybody to know there's no in-group and out-group in Miami. I mean, and we need to be able to collectively take a long, hard look in the mirror about what our challenges are, and then embrace a solutions-oriented mindset. It's easy to curse the darkness. It's much harder to find a candle. And I think part of this work for those of us that are in it is being able to co-create solutions and not take a savior approach, but rather how can we solve the Rubik's Cube together?
I love that. Great way to end the episode. Saif, thank you so much again for joining. Again, all of Saif's contact information in the description, and we will see you again on the next episode. Thank you so much.